From the ashes of revolution, the Soviet Union rose with astonishing speed, transforming itself from a war-torn agrarian society into an industrial superpower that rivaled the United States. Imagine the thunder of factories roaring to life, steel pouring from furnaces, and endless parades of military might marching through Red Square, projecting strength to the world. Yet behind this spectacle of power lay a fragile reality: ordinary citizens queuing for hours in front of empty shelves, families struggling to find basic necessities, and whispers of discontent echoing through the streets. This stark contrast between grandeur and scarcity sets the stage for one of history's most dramatic economic stories. How did a nation that once seemed unstoppable collapse into ruin within just a few decades? Was it the rigid ideology of central planning, the mismanagement of resources and reforms, or the sheer weight of history pressing down on a system unable to adapt? The rise and fall of the Soviet economy is not just a tale of numbers and policies. It is a human story of ambition, sacrifice, and ultimately, failure. The Soviet Union's economy was unlike anything the world had seen before, built on the foundation of a centrally planned and state-controlled system that sought to reshape society through rapid industrialization. From the very beginning, the Soviet leadership believed that economic power was inseparable from political survival. And so every factory, every farm, and every worker became part of a grand design orchestrated from Moscow. This was not simply an economy, it was an ideological experiment, a model meant to prove that socialism could outpace capitalism, that collective planning could rival the free market, and that the Soviet Union could stand shoulder to shoulder with the United States as a global superpower. The stakes were immense. Success meant validation of an entire worldview, while failure risked undermining the legitimacy of the state itself. For decades, the Soviet system delivered impressive feats, transforming a rural nation into an industrial giant, launching satellites into space, and building a military machine that commanded global respect. Yet beneath the surface, cracks began to form as inefficiencies, shortages, and stagnation slowly eroded the promise of prosperity. This is the story of ambition that soared, growth that dazzled, stagnation that suffocated, and collapse that reshaped the world. In the aftermath of revolution, the Soviet Union embarked on a bold economic experiment, and under Stalin in the 1920s and 1930s, the five-year plans became the blueprint for rapid industrialization. Entire cities were transformed into industrial hubs, steel production soared, electrification spread across the land, and the military was built into a formidable force. Yet this progress came at a staggering human cost. Forced collectivization uprooted millions of peasants, famine ravaged the countryside, and repression silenced dissent, while inefficiencies were buried beneath triumphant statistics. As the Second World War erupted, Soviet industry proved decisive in defeating Nazi Germany, producing tanks, aircraft, and weapons on a scale that astonished the world. Emerging from the war battered but victorious, the USSR claimed its place as one of the global superpowers. Its economic might symbolized by the space race and the vast military-industrial complex that projected strength far beyond its borders. But by the 1960s and 1970s, the momentum began to falter. Growth slowed, innovation lagged, and the rigid central planning system struggled to meet the needs of a modernizing society. Consumer goods were scarce, black markets flourished, and while the oil boom of the 1970s temporarily masked deeper structural weaknesses, the cracks in the system widened. By the 1980s, the Soviet economy was in visible decline, productivity fell, debt mounted, and technological progress lagged far behind the West. Gorbachev's reforms, perestroika, and glasnost were meant to rescue the system, but instead they destabilized it further, loosening the state's grip without providing a viable alternative. Revenues collapsed, political fragmentation deepened, and by 1991 the Soviet Union dissolved, its once mighty economy reduced to ruins. What began as a story of ambition and triumph ended as a cautionary tale of rigidity, mismanagement, and the inability to adapt to a changing world. The Soviet Union's economy rose through sheer force of planning and ambition, driven by the belief that centralized control could engineer prosperity. and rival the capitalist world for decades. This system delivered monumental achievements, from industrial expansion to military strength. But it ultimately faltered because it could not adapt, innovate, or sustain the everyday needs of its people. The rigid structures that once seemed powerful became shackles, preventing flexibility in a rapidly changing global landscape. Factories produced steel and weapons in abundance, yet consumer goods remained scarce, and the promise of equality gave way to frustration and inefficiency. The collapse of the Soviet economy reminds us that no system, however grand, can survive if it ignores the realities of human needs and the necessity of progress. Today, the lesson is clear. Economies must balance ideology with pragmatism, ambition with sustainability, and power with adaptability. In a world where technological revolutions and global shifts happen faster than ever, the Soviet Union's economic story is not just history. It is a warning about the cost of ignoring reality.